computer hacking forensic investigator, and also I am an ISO 27002 certified. Yeah, so I do train at iLab Africa, and partly with Capable. Yeah, so that is me in a nutshell for anyone new who wasn't with us yesterday. So ideally today we want to continue with our discussion on what we were talking about yesterday. Maybe just a recap for anyone who might have forgotten or for anyone who wasn't with us yesterday. We ideally talked about ICT. How does ICT basically affect us? And we also did a roadmap of where we were and where we are, and ideally how ICT has played a role in our transition from the pre-computing systems to ideally where we are today. We try to define what ICT means, or maybe technology means, and how does it affect cybersecurity in general, or how does it correlate with cybersecurity. And we're talking about the three aspects of information, where we said we need it to be timely, complete, and also accurate. And part of these three things actually form the basis or the fundamentals of the CIA triad, which is basically cybersecurity in general. Yeah. So from there, we actually got an example of cybersecurity ideally. How does it feel? What are some of the expected attacks that we might get from it and all? Yeah. So that couples with what we want to learn today. So today we want to at least have a feel of what are some of the tools, techniques, and good practices that ideally we can use to ensure that we are actually cyber secure. So in this case, we are trying to look at each and every aspect that maybe you need to deploy or employ in your systems at work and maybe at home, just so that at the end of the day, you can basically know what to do. You might not need to have a full picture of how all these technical aspects work, but ideally a gist of what it is and how it works will really help us in basically understanding what, let's say you get a security analyst in your company or at your place, at your residence, and they are doing something to improve your security, cybersecurity aspect. At least when they give you a hint of this is what I need and this is what I'll be doing, you can relate to it. And that's the main aspect as to why we are here. So today we're gonna couple whatever I say with some videos from YouTube, just to bulk up the information and also understand better what we're gonna do. And as usual, just as Simon has said, if you have any questions, kindly drop them on the chat, and we shall be able to answer you at the end of this training, perhaps. For those who asked questions, and then we will actually look at them today, feel free to repost your question, yeah, so that while we go through, we can work on the different aspects. So thank you. So today, just as I had earlier alluded, we want to talk about cybersecurity tools, techniques, and good practices. So ideally, yesterday we talked about examples of attacks that would ideally be used to compromise our systems and all. And today we want to see what are some of the tools and techniques that we can actually deploy, and so that we can at least try to deter the attacks that we looked about yesterday. So we're gonna have an in-depth of the attacks also. So don't worry, we shall get there and have a better feel of what we were saying. Yeah. So in today's lesson, we want to talk about yes. So today we want to talk about introduction to tools and technologies. Then we shall dive into the different tools and technologies that we have, ranging from firewalls. Basically, what are they? How do they work? Yeah. Then we shall also go to antivirus softwares. Then what are intrusion detection systems? So yesterday I actually gave you an example of SNOT as one of them. We're gonna look at a video of that shows us how does SNOT ideally work, what is it, how does it work, yeah? Then we shall talk a bit about encryption. Basically, what is encryption, what are the types of encryption, and why do we need that type of encryption at that point. Then a little bit of MFA, that is multi-factor authentication. Where is it used? How is it interesting for us to actually enjoy it? Then we shall finish with what we call penetration testing ideally. What does it entail? A little bit of what you should be looking for in case you actually get a penetration tester to do a penetration test in your systems, yeah? And where can you get good penetration testers, yeah? In Kenya, ideally. So to start with, we have a firewall. So basically, firewalls are crucial tools for cybersecurity. They basically act as barriers between network and the internet. And they ideally work by examining incoming traffic and only allowing traffic through that you have authorized it. So ideally, firewalls are just they're kind of routers, yeah, that are specialized for inspecting and filtering traffic very quickly, yeah. So they actually accept traffic, go through that traffic, or go through any information that comes through it very fast, and they filter ideally what was good and what is bad. A layman example of firewall would be the way we use a sieve, yeah. Maybe when you're cooking tea and you ideally want to sieve, yeah. So you pour a tea inside and all the chaff remains, or the tea leaves remains, and the good tea actually goes in. And that's the exact same way a firewall ideally works, yeah? So each and every activity that has been set to go through the firewall ideally gets inspected and filtered, and only that which you have allowed to ideally pass through your network will ideally pass through. So it needs pre-configuration, yeah. And in this case, pre-configuration is giving it ideas of what it should look for and what it should allow, yeah. So firewalls basically act as IDSs and IPSs, so that is intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems, yeah. So most of the time they help prevent denial of service attacks, yeah. And they can also do what we call session monitoring. So session monitoring in this case is each and everything that passes or happens in your network through the firewall is ideally logged, yeah, is actually checked. It's monitored each and every time to actually ensure that the security services that need to be enabled are actually enabled, and it helps protect your servers, be it any other devices like the endpoint devices, and you can configure it either outside your network or inside your network. Yeah. So we're actually saying there are two main types of firewalls. Yeah. So there is the network firewalls and host-based firewalls. So network firewalls are placed at the edge of the network, while host-based firewalls are ideally installed in individual computers or devices. Yeah. So in a case where you're using a network firewall, you ideally have to place it between the internet and your private network, so that it actually filters anything that is coming from your private network into the internet, if you have set it to have an outbound filter, and it filters any traffic that comes from outside, that is the internet, into your intranet or your internal network, if you have set an inbound filter on it. Yeah. So the host-based firewalls in this case are configured on your machines, be it your desktop, be it your laptop, your tablets, be it on your servers. Yeah. And they basically act as another layer of defense whenever it comes to security. Remember yesterday we talked about defense in depth, which is kind of like an onion security. So firewalls can also be implemented in a defense in depth kind of security structure, where you can have one inside and one outside your network, so that if in case anything passed by your network-based firewall and came into your internet or into your network, once it tries to access anything on your host-based devices, it's actually captured. Yeah. So it increases another layer of security to it. Yeah. So since today I said we're gonna learn more of me talking and the YouTube videos, let me just share my screen so that you guys can see ideally what I am talking about when you talk about firewalls. So give me a sec. I need to, yeah. So kindly tell me if you can see my screen, then let's see if we can ensure we have sound. Oh, just a sec. Simon, kindly allow me to share my sound also. Can't seem to do that.
You can try now.
You're giving me an issue. It's not. Let's see if that will work. Yeah. Currently I can't. So here I'm introducing to, I don't know. Or maybe tell me if you can hear the sound.
Properly, be accessible, best passwords. Rob.
and place our homes at great risk, right? Hence, fencing our property helps safeguard and keeps trespassers at bay. Similarly, imagine our computers in use without protection. This would increase the probability of hackers infiltrating our networks. To overcome this challenge, just like how boundary walls protect our houses, a virtual wall helps safeguard and secure our devices from intruders, and such a wall is known as a firewall. Firewalls are security devices that filter the incoming and outgoing traffic within a private network. For example, if you were to visit your friend who lives in a gated community, you would first take permission from the security guard. The security guard would check with your friend if you should be allowed entry or not. If all is well, your access is granted. On the other hand, the security guard would not grant permission to a trespasser looking to enter the same premises. Here, the entry access depends solely on your friend, the resident's discretion. The role of the security guard in this case is similar to that of a firewall. The firewall works like a gate for your computer's entry point, which only welcomes incoming traffic that it has been configured to accept. Firewalls filter the network traffic within your network and analyzes which traffic should be allowed or restricted based on a set of rules in order to spot and prevent cyber attacks. Your computer communicates with the internet in the form of network packets that hold details like the source address, destination address, and information. These network packets enter your computer ports. The firewall works on a set of rules based on the details of these network packets, like their source address, the destination address, content, and port number. Only trusted traffic sources or IP addresses are allowed to enter your network. When you connect your computer to the internet, there is a high chance of hackers infiltrating your network. This is when a firewall comes to your rescue by acting as a barrier between your computer and the internet. The firewall rejects the malicious data packet and thus protects your network from hackers. On the other hand, traffic from trusted websites is allowed access to your network. This way, the firewall carries out quick assessments to detect malware and other suspicious activity, thereby protecting your network from being susceptible to a cyber attack. Firewalls can either be hardware or software. Software firewalls are programs installed on each computer. This is also called a host firewall. Meanwhile, hardware firewalls are equipment that are established within the gateway and your network. Linksys routers are a good example of a hardware firewall. Besides this, there are other types of firewalls designed based off their traffic filtering methods, structure, and functionality. The firewall that compares each outgoing and incoming network packet to a set of established rules, such as the allowed IP addresses, IP protocol, port number, and other aspects of the packet, is known as a packet filtering firewall. If the incoming network traffic is not per the predefined rules, that traffic is blocked. A variant of the packet filtering firewall is the stateful inspection firewall. These types of firewalls not only examine the network packet, but also checks whether or not that network packet is part of an established network connection. Such firewalls are also referred to as dynamic packet filtering firewalls. Our next type of firewall is called a proxy firewall. This draws close comparison to how you give proxy attendance for a friend, like how you take the authority to represent your friend. The proxy firewall pretends to be you and interact with the internet. They come between you and the internet, and thereby prevents direct connections. This protects your device's identity and keeps the network safe from potential attacks. Only incoming data packet contents are protected. The proxy firewall transfers it to you. They're also known as application-level gateway. The firewall can spot malicious actions and block your computer from receiving data packets from harmful sources. In addition to preventing cyber attacks, firewalls are also used in educational institutions and offices to restrict users' access to certain websites or applications. It is used to avoid access to unauthorized content. So here's a question for you. Which firewall is also known as application-level gateway? A, proxy firewalls. B, stateful inspection firewalls. C, packet filtering firewalls. D, dynamic packet filtering firewalls. Do give it a thought and leave your answers in the comment section below. 3 lucky winners will receive Amazon gift vouchers.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that kind of gives you an in-depth understanding of what a firewall is and what it does. Yes, so I hope that makes sense when it comes to what firewalls ideally are. Yeah. The next aspect of what we want to talk about will be antivirus softwares. So antivirus softwares are ideally programs designed to detect and remove malicious software from a computer or a network. Yeah. So antiviruses work by scanning files and comparing them to databases of known viruses and malwares. Yeah. So we have different types of antivirus softwares that we use, ranging from Kaspersky, we have Trend Micro, we have Sophos, Norton 360, Microsoft Defender is another one that actually comes with pre-installed with Microsoft. So all these softwares ideally help us check for malware in our systems. Yeah. So depending on which antivirus you're ideally using, it might end up either showing you an issue or telling you either to quarantine it or not. Yeah. So what they do is ideally they just scan the files in your machine, depending on the interval or how it has been set to ideally work. Yeah. And in case there is any malicious software that has been installed in your machine, is first and foremost expunged from your machine, then you can actually get an alert, yeah, of that machine, depending of that malware or file, sorry. So if you end up using something like Microsoft Defender, it ideally gives you the permission to choose whatever you want. Yeah. Do you want to either remove it? Do you want to quarantine it? Or do you want to let it run? Yeah. So the good aspect of antivirus softwares is that right now we have antiviruses that also come in with aspects of security in terms of when you're downloading. So we have something like a Chrome extensions. Yeah, for those of us who use Chrome, they actually
hi David.
like, yes.
Your voice is low. Inasikika, but it's iko mbali kidogo, so you can move closer to the microphone or use a higher tone.
So thank you for that. Let me try something a minute. Tell me if that's better. Hey, Simon, is that better?
Now that's even now. I think that's worse than it was.
So let's see. Maybe I can do this if that's how we. Yeah.
And also, I'm being told you keep the slides moving.
Oh yes, no worries. I am hoping you can hear me better now. I've moved nearer my screen.
Yeah, I can hear you. Though I know it's low. The tone is still low. From my end, at least. You can use a higher tone, I think.
Sure. Yes. Okay, let me try do as you suggest. So I was actually talking about antivirus software. And these are just programs designed to detect and remove malicious software from a computer or a network. So how they basically work is they scan the files and compare them with a database of known viruses and malwares. Then using this information, they can actually detect for you whether the software or the file that you're running is ideally malicious or not. So there are different kinds of antivirus softwares that one can actually employ or deploy on their machines to ideally give them this aspect. We have different examples such as there is Norton 360, there is Trend Micro, Sophos, Kaspersky, McAfee Total Protection. Depending on what your preference is, you can ideally choose. The good thing is there are different antivirus softwares that give you different usages. So for instance, if you're using something like Microsoft Defender as an antivirus, it gives you the ability to choose everything that you want. So once it detects there is a malicious software, what it does is that it gives you a prompt, yeah, on whether you want to quarantine, you want to allow, or you want to delete it, so you have custody of the files that you need, yeah. So that is where you now decide whether you want to take the risk or not, because there are some times when you're downloading a file and you really need to use it, but you're being told it is a malicious software, yeah. So that's ideally where you choose. We also have different ones like Kaspersky, which ideally removes or deletes that file, then notes you that it has already been deleted. So it does it for you, yeah. Then at the moment, we have other forms of antivirus software like extensions. So we have, if you're using a Chrome browser, it ideally comes with an extension which acts as an antivirus for anything that you download online using the Chrome browser, yeah. So in case the browser ideally has any, or the file that you're downloading has any issues, it ends up quarantining it or deleting it in totality and does not allow it to come into your machine. That ideally helps in a case where you have been attacked and someone is trying to use your machine to ideally download something from your web browser, yeah. So once they do that, Chrome actually comes in, the Chrome extension comes in and helps you quarantine that that aspect which is being downloaded, and you end up being secure, yeah. So there are modern antivirus softwares that also include features such as real-time scanning, email protection, and web filtering to protect against a wide range of threats. So that's which I've given an example of the Chrome extension. So ideally, you might be thinking, where or how does antivirus softwares ideally benchmark or get the files that they compare the file you've downloaded with? So you can also do that manually. And in this case, we are looking at aspects such as, let me just share my screen so that you guys can see. We have what we call virus total. So So we have this this site, virustotal.com, ideally gives you the ability to manually scan either a file, be it a URL, or whatever you ideally want to scan. It gives you the ability to scan wherever you want to scan, be it a file, be it a URL, even if it's an IP address. So for instance, you have decided to ideally, or your antivirus has given you a file that seems malicious, and you do want to know, why is it malicious? Why was it flagged? Yeah. So in this case, all you need to do is, let's try and check, for instance, for a URL, yeah, that is malicious, yeah. So I can just look for malicious URL example. Yeah. So let's see if we can get one so that I can show you how you do it. Yeah, something like this. br.icloud.br. So here we actually being told that it's a phishing malware, but let's check if it's true. Maybe someone ideally told you to look at it or send it and everything, and you'd want to know if it's malicious or not. So you can just come, place it here, and you search. Yeah, it will ideally give you a list of where it has been searched, or if it has been previously been highlighted. Yeah. Then from all the lists or the security vendor analysis, it gives you why it is ideally being flagged. Yeah. So in this case, if you are using, for instance, Sophos and antivirus, yeah, it will actually flag it because it will take it as a phishing, yeah, and it's malicious, yeah. So Bitdefender will also flag it. Forcepoint Threat Seeker will also flag it. It actually tells you that this one has been flagged by different aspects to show that it's a phishing, for instance, URL. Yeah. So it also gives you the details as to why they actually think it's phishing. So it gives you the categories. It gives you when it was first submitted as a phishing site. Yeah. It gives you the last submission of where it happened. And the good thing is it does it for you in real time. So you can see up here, the analysis is ideally 20 hours ago. And from the last submission, we can actually see that it was yesterday, I think, at 10:27, 46 UTC. So it gives you up-to-date information on the different aspects of whether it's malicious or not. Yeah. Then it also utilizes what we call rules. Remember we said for antiviruses and firewalls, they actually work with predefined rules on what is good and what is bad and what does it configure. So that's where you're seeing we have things like Yara rules. Yeah. So if you want to do a threat intel or a threat intelligence for your system, then you might end up using Yara rules to ideally do that. If, for instance, you had been given an IP address that is malicious. So let's just check for a malicious IP address over here. Yeah, we can pick one, something like this. I don't know what this is, so we can pick 102, 135. So maybe you actually realize you have a malicious URL and you want to know why is it malicious, yeah? So you can just come here and search, and it will give you it will ideally give you a breakdown of it, yeah? So this one was actually last done an analysis for 9 days ago, yeah? That's a bit old, yeah? You can also reanalyze it by yourself if you have an account, you can sign in. So you can reanalyze it yourself, and it gives you an automated check, yeah? So ideally, this has been checked by all these security features, and they have been given a clean bill of health, unless apart from it being here under abuses. So the good thing is you can always come and get the details of why, yeah, it is malicious, yeah. So it gives you all that information. Then you can actually go to community and see what people say about it, yeah. So this one has no comments given on it, but that's how you ideally get to understand why it's malicious. And these are the same things that antiviruses ideally use to ensure that the files, the softwares that you're using are malicious or not, yeah. So I am hoping that makes sense to you in terms of antivirus, yeah. So I also have a video of an antivirus that I'd like us to, yeah, no, this is fine, yeah. So that is an example of an antivirus software and how you can ideally confirm, for instance, if a file in your system has been flagged as malicious or not. You can ideally just download it or copy and paste it on VirusTotal, and it will give you a statistics on how it is, why is it being flagged as malicious. So the third aspect I want us to discuss about today is intrusion detection systems. So yesterday we actually just alluded to this a little bit. And these are tools that monitor networks for suspicious activity, yeah? So they work by analyzing the network traffic and look for signs of unauthorized access or malicious behavior. So intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems can also be things like the two that we have discussed just before, that is firewalls and antiviruses, yeah? So these are just tools that help us monitor the network so that they can see if there is any suspicious or malicious activity that is going on in our network, yeah? So they also work with pre-configured rules and how to check it. So if you can remember when we were discussing yesterday and we said cybersecurity is not a standalone, it actually works on procedures, people, and products. Yeah. So you'll need to do procedures or rules that will govern how these products ideally work. Yeah. And the people who will be running or taking charge of the intrusion detection systems should, at the end of the day, be able to understand how these things are actually happening and what's doing. There are two main types of intrusion detection systems. So we have network-based detection systems and host-based intrusion detection systems. Yeah. So the NIDS monitor network traffic, while HIDS monitor activities on individual computers and devices. The same way we have talked about firewalls. Firewalls can actually be intrusion detection systems, and they can also be prevention systems. So a very good example of an intrusion detection system that you can utilize even at your home, at your places of work, or even at home, will be what we were talking about yesterday, SNOT. Yeah. So I have a video of how SNOT ideally works and what it is. So I can just share it with you so that we can basically understand what it is and how can we try to configure it at our respective places where we want to ideally use it. Yeah. So
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blue Team training series. This is an introductory guide to Blue Team operations. I just want to take a couple of seconds to thank our sponsor, Linode, for part 2 of, with this series, where Apple said, in this video, we're going to be exploring intrusion detection with SNOT. All right, so the objective here is to detect network intrusions with SNOT. Now, if you're not familiar with SNOT, let's get started by getting an understanding of what SNOT is and how network intrusion detection systems work. However, before we do that, let's get a high-level overview of what we'll be covering. So we're going to be starting off with getting an idea of what intrusion detection systems are. We'll get an introduction to SNOT. We'll take a look at how SNOT works, where SNOT can be placed within a network, which is very important. We'll then move on to the practical demonstration, where we'll take a look at how to install and configure SNOT. We'll also be exploring the SNOT configuration file and how to write custom SNOT rules. Now, one thing that you need to take into consideration here is that we will be we'll be focused on using SNOT 2 as opposed to SNOT 3, and I'll be explaining the differences between the versions in a couple of seconds. The prerequisites are the following. You need to have familiarity with information security concepts, various types of protocols and multiple layers of the OSI model. You also need a functional knowledge of TCP/IP and UDP, and familiarity with HTTP and web technologies. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's get an understanding as to what intrusion detection systems are and what they're used for. An intrusion detection system, also known as an IDS, is a system that allows you to actively discover threats, attacks, or intrusions on a network, or intrusions on a host or the services that are running within a network. Now, there are two types of IDS solutions based on the placement. Firstly, we have a host-based IDS, also known as an HIDS. This is typically set up on an individual host on a network, and a network IDS, also known as an NIDS, is placed within a network to monitor the traffic to and from all hosts on a network. So an HIDS is just set up to monitor the traffic for one particular host system, whereas an NIDS, which is what SNOT is placed within a network, depending on your requirements, to monitor the traffic to and from all hosts within that network. So an IDS system, or an IDS, is a system or host that is planted within a network
to capture traffic and identify malicious activity based on predefined rules, after which the malicious activity is logged and a notification is sent to the relevant parties informing them of an intrusion. Now, the actual types of rules you can write will allow you to determine or to essentially specify what you want done for for specific types of network activity or for a specific packet. So you can either choose to log that particular packet, or you can enable logging globally and display the actual alerts on the terminal, therefore informing individuals or the relevant parties that there is an intrusion. And one of the great things that you can do is you can actually configure Snort to essentially output or to essentially log all malicious activity into JSON format that can then be integrated with Splunk. And of course, we'll be covering Splunk and how to do that. So we are primarily going to be focused on how to use Snort to essentially, or how to set up an intrusion detection system with Snort on our local network, right? Now, one thing that you might have noticed is that intrusion detection systems are typically coupled with the functionality to also perform intrusion prevention, whereby specific rules can be set to drop packets that are malicious or intrusive. So why am I saying this? Well, we are focused on intrusion detection, whereby we're simply using Snort to monitor the network and the traffic within that network to identify threats or intrusions. We're not really focused on doing anything about it. So we're not going to be, taking a look at how to block or how to drop packets, even though we will be covering it. Our primary objective is to actually, essentially identify, these intrusions that are occurring on a network. I just want to take a couple of moments to thank our Patreons. Thank you, Michael Hubbard, Dustin Umpress, Jerry Speds, Push Kev, types of videos possible.
Yeah, from it, you can basically understand ideally what an IDS actually means, and how Snort can actually be used to ensure that the intrusion prevention systems ideally work. So I just wanted to give you that as an example of how it ideally works, because you will need to have more understanding of maybe the network infrastructure and the protocols that we're using. In case you'd want to ideally deploy it in your different places of work and ideally at home. So that gives us an introduction, or just a feel of how IDSs ideally work, and how Snort, being a network intrusion detection system, works to defend the network in case of any malicious activity. Yeah. So for instance, from what Hackersploit was actually saying, is that you actually need to pre-configure it, and it only alerts the user of any issues that are actually cropping up in your network. But in a case where you also want it to act as a defense mechanism, yeah, you can also configure it with the different rules so that it ends up acting as an intrusion prevention system. So in this case, you're actually getting two for the price of one. Yeah. Then we have encryption. So encryption is the process of encoding information so that it can only be read by authorized parties. Yeah. So it's an essential tool for protecting sensitive data from unauthorized access. So remember yesterday when we were talking about the three aspects of the CIA triad, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So encryption in this case tries to improve the aspect of confidentiality because it ideally converts information yeah, from plain text to scrambled data, for instance, so that even if someone gets wind of it and tries to look at it, it wouldn't make sense for them. Yeah. So that is ideally what encryption is. So there are two main types of encryption that we want to talk about. And I'll also add in another one, which we call hashing. Yeah. So symmetric, there are two types. One is symmetric encryption, and the other is asymmetric encryption. So symmetric encryption uses the same key to encrypt and decrypt data, while asymmetric encryption uses different keys to process each and every information. So what are we saying? This is an example of symmetric encryption. Yeah. So you have your original text. Now, this is information, for instance, that you want to send to your boss, yeah, that no one else needs to ideally see. So you have the original text which you have written and you understand. You actually use what we call a secret key, which is used for scrambling this data. So it's just an algorithm, yeah, that you will use that will convert this data to scrambled data, which we call a ciphertext or an encrypted text. Yeah. Then you ideally send it to your manager. Yeah. So when your manager receives it, they have the same key like the one you have. Yeah. And they now use that same key to convert the scrambled data that came to them back to original data that you had written, and they can ideally read what you had written. So in a case where someone in here, while on transit from yourself to maybe your manager, ends up intercepting, yeah, or getting wind of the information, yeah, in what we call a man-in-the-middle attack, they will, at the end of the day, not be able to read that information because this is all they'll be seeing, yeah, unless they have the secret key that you used on it, yeah, then they cannot ideally read. So the secret key is always secret between the sender and the recipient of the information, because they are the only ones who know the information. And this can also be done in reverse. So your manager gives you a reply, they do an encryption with the key and send it to you. It comes in a scrambled data format. Then when it gets to this other side, you can use the same key which was used at the other end to decrypt that data and get the feedback from them. So that is asymmetric encryption. That is symmetric encryption, sorry. Then we have the second part, which we call asymmetric encryption. So asymmetric encryption is the form of encryption that uses two keys to ideally encrypt information. Yeah. So we have one key that we call a public key. So in this case, a public key is public. Yeah. Anyone and everyone can access that information so that they can use it to send to you information that you only need to read. Then on the other side, we have what we call a secret key or a private key. A private key is ideally private. That is for you and for your eyes only. So in this case, you want to send information using asymmetric encryption to your boss. Yeah. So you get the key, you get your information, which is the plain text, yeah, or the original data. You use your bosses, yeah. So each and everyone has two pairs of keys, a public key and a secret key, yeah. So in this case, you take your information, use the boss's public key to actually encrypt this information, yeah. into a ciphertext or the scrambled data as we saw, then send it. Yeah. When your boss gets it, yeah, for him to decrypt this information, he needs to have his secret key, or what we call a private key. Yeah. So he uses that private key, which only him or her has it, to decrypt the information or convert this information from the ciphertext to the original text. Yeah. In a case where they would need to send you back data in the form of no one else has to see it, what they do is they will take your public key, yeah, encrypt the feedback information with it, then send it, then you will use your private key because you alone has your private key, and you decrypt the information. So that means we have confidentiality of this information in such a way that only the eyes that needed to see the information get to see the information. So that is ideally what we call asymmetric encryption. So let's see a short video also on the same to bulk up our information on asymmetric encryption, symmetric and asymmetric encryption. So yeah.
Process of taking a message and scrambling its contents so that only certain people can look at their message. There are two types of encryption, symmetric and asymmetric encryption. Let's first take a look at symmetric encryption to understand why asymmetric encryption was created. To do that, let me introduce you to Alice and Bob. Alice has a sensitive document she wants to share with Bob. She uses an encryption program to protect her document with a password or passphrase that she chooses. She then sends the encrypted document to Bob. However, Bob cannot open this message because he doesn't know the passphrase that Alice used to encrypt the document. In other words, he doesn't have the key to open the lock. Now comes a real problem. How does Alice share this passphrase securely with Bob? Sending it through email is risky because others might find the passphrase and use it to decrypt any messages between Alice and Bob. This is exactly the kind of problem that asymmetric encryption intends to solve. It is comparable to the mailbox on the street. The mailbox is exposed to anyone who knows its location. We can say that the location of the mailbox is completely public. Anyone who knows the address can go to the mailbox and drop in a letter. However, only the owner of the mailbox has a key to open it up and read the messages. So let's now go back to technical details. When using asymmetric encryption, both Alice and Bob have to generate a key pair on their computers. A popular and secure way for doing this is by using the RSA algorithm. This algorithm will generate a public and private key that are mathematically linked to each other. Public keys can be used to encrypt data, and only the private key can be used to decrypt it. Even though the keys are linked together, they cannot be derived from each other. In other words, if you know someone's public key, you cannot derive its private key. If we retake our mailbox example, then the mailbox's address would be the public key, something that everyone is allowed to know. The owner of the mailbox is the only one who has the private key, and that is needed to open up the mailbox. Let's now take a look at how Alice and Bob use asymmetric encryption to communicate securely with each other. They start by exchanging their public keys. Bob gives his public key to Alice, and Alice gives her public key to Bob. Now Alice can send her sensitive document again. She takes the document and encrypts it with Bob's public key. She then sends the file to Bob, who uses his private key to unlock the document and read it. Because they use asymmetric encryption, only Bob is able to decrypt the message. Not even Alice can decrypt it she doesn't have Bob's private key. The strength and security of the asymmetric encryption now relies on Alice and Bob to keep their private keys well protected. If an attacker steals Alice's private key, it can be used to decrypt all messages that are intended for Alice. However, the attacker cannot decrypt messages that were sent by Alice because that requires Bob's private key. Asymmetric encryption is used in a lot of places where security really matters. You might not be aware of it, but every time you visit a secure website via HTTPS, you're actually using asymmetric encryption. It's also being used to securely send emails with the protocol. And one last example, Bitcoin also uses asymmetric encryption to make sure that only the owner of a money wallet can withdraw or transfer money from it. So now you know how asymmetric encryption works and what the differences are between asymmetric and symmetric encryption. If you like this video, consider
I'm hoping that video solidifies the information on what asymmetric and symmetric encryption ideally are. Yeah. So there is a third aspect to it. What I want to show you that we call hashing. Yeah. So basically, hashing is the form in which you actually create an alphanumeric number for your document. For instance, I am thinking of an example where you're working on a sensitive document at your workplace, and maybe the environment in which you work in is an open space. So when you leave your desk maybe to head out for lunch, someone can come in and change the document on the important aspects of it, and you might not know. So try picture you're actually working on maybe a 200-page document. Yeah. So if someone changes something in page 50, it might be quite difficult for you to get wind of it and know ideally this document was changed. Then once you send it and someone looks at it and they're asking, what's this? How did this happen? And maybe you didn't know. So a better way of protecting that is by the use of what we call a hashing algorithm. So a hashing algorithm is an algorithm that ensures any change of information, even if it's just a white space. If you click the space bar on any document, it ideally changes the hash that was generated for that document. Yeah. So let's do an example of that so that we understand. So I am going to start what we call hash my files. So this is hash my files, yeah. So hash my files is a software that can actually help you do hashing on your files. It generates an alphanumeric character that is unique to that file. Yeah. So it actually uses different types of algorithms depending on what you want to use that cannot be changed. Yeah. And if anything in that document is changed, then you end up knowing it. Yeah. So I'll start my Word. So I have a blank Word document over here, which we can use. So let's say we want to say something. Hello there. We are learning basics. We are learning basic cybersecurity concepts. Yeah. So this is my document. I was working on it. I save it. Yeah. So I can ideally save it on my computer desktop. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe call it capacity building. Yeah. So if I come to do this, yeah, and this also. So if I come to hash my files, yeah, and I want to generate a hash for this document called capacity building. It actually is, I just need to come to add files, yeah. Then it asks me what files do I want? I want capacity building, and I open. So it generates for me a hash. So this MD5 SHA1 CRC32 SHA256 SHA512 SHA384 are all algorithms. Yeah. So in this case, it also tells me the time, the modified time that I created, at what time. So my machine time is a bit different. Don't worry. Entry modified time was at what time, and the file. Yeah. So what I can do is I can read the properties, yeah, of this file. Yeah. So for instance, I want to take MD5. Yeah. So I can ideally copy it. It gives me all this information. Yeah. So if I come to this document and add anything, even if I say I Control V, so this is an addition that was not there before. Yeah. So I'm putting this here so that we can compare with the previous one. And also it's an addition to what was not there, for instance. Yeah. And I come and save it. So when I come back here, it ideally shows color green. So that tells me something has changed. Yeah. So if I refresh, yeah, on the same, it gives me a different hash. Yeah. So here we actually had let me just copy it again, MD5 hash copy. So we can basically compare. So with any addition, it ideally becomes different. Yeah. It creates a different hash, and even the time will ideally have changed. So even if I read, I remove a white space like that in this document, and I come back here, yeah, it ideally tells me something has been changed. Yeah. So if I refresh it, it gives me yet another different hash number, telling me ideally this document has been changed. So that is another. Apologies for that. So that is another example of an encryption using a hashing algorithm that you can use to actually know if your documents have been altered or not. So the good thing is you can do as many documents as you want, depending on how you want to use it. You can get hash my files on your computer, and you can ideally lock it so that no one changes it after you have done it. So what you do is you actually lock it with maybe a PIN number or password, yeah, on hash my files. Then each and every file that you put here can actually be hashed. So if anyone changes or anything changes, all you need to do is you just need to come and click on it, and it shows you a green aspect on that file. If you see something green, then that means something has been changed. The only difficult aspect is it won't tell you ideally what part of the document has been changed. So you might need to look it up by yourself one after the other. Yeah. So that is the other aspect of encryption that I wanted to share with us today. Yeah. So let's see, let's try and move on. Yeah. So that is encryption. We have the other aspects of multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication is ideally a security measure that requires users to provide multiple forms of identification before accessing a system or network. Yeah. So it is just a security measure that maybe allows you to have a PIN number and something else that either you have in your possession, either you know, something you know about, or something that you are, for instance, a biometric print. Yeah. So it includes something that this person knows, like a password, something that they have, like a security token or a one-time token, an OTP. Then something they are, like a fingerprint, a face scan, or something. Yeah. So MFA is an effective way to prevent unauthorized access as it makes much more difficult for the attackers to gain access, even if they have obtained one form of identification. Yeah. So apologies. So MFA ideally works in the form of the way we have what is it called? Our phones. Yeah. So the way we have our phones, and maybe you want to do an bank transfer. Yeah. So a bank transfer, you'll need to have your PIN number, yeah, for the bank. Then after that, if you want to do a transaction, they actually send you a one-time password. So that is something you know. Yeah. So something you have. So that is like the security token that has been sent to you. Yeah. So using that, you can actually use. In other cases, they actually ask you for something, you know, like whenever you are setting your account, they actually asked you a private security question. Yeah. Like, for instance, which school did you go to? Or what is your nickname? Yeah. Or what is your mother's maiden name? Yeah. So that is something you know, that is knowledge that now you have to input the answer to it and you get access. Other times you're actually asked to use a fingerprint. So you unlock it with your PIN. Then before you're actually given the point of using your fingerprint, or be it you need to scan your face. In some places you will go, you will be asked to ideally sign on the electronic machine for you to get access to the information. Yeah. So that is what a multi-factor authentication ideally is. And the more MFA you have, the more secure you are. So if you have two aspects of authentication, for instance, you have something, they require something you have, and maybe something you know, that is two of them, then that becomes a two-factor authentication, a 2FA. Yeah. If you have three or more, it actually becomes a multi-factor authentication, or a three-factor authentication, a four-factor authentication, but ideally in general, it's just called a multi-factor authentication on it. Yeah, I hope that makes sense to us. The second aspect of what we want to talk about is penetration testing. Yeah. So also known as pen testing, this is a practice of testing a system or a network for vulnerabilities by attempting to exploit them. Yeah. So they involve using of various tools and techniques to simulate an attack. Yeah. So in a case where maybe you want to know the status of how secure is your system, you can actually have or employ a security penetration tester to ideally do a security penetration testing on your system, or a security audit. So in general, it is always called vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So a vulnerability assessment means they are just combing through your system to get and see what vulnerabilities are ideally exposed in your system. Yeah. So once they get the vulnerability, they don't do anything on it. Yeah. They just give you a report of these are the vulnerable places that you can be attacked from what we have seen. Once you do a penetration testing, it ideally goes further. You actually do a vulnerability assessment to get what vulnerabilities are there in the system. Then you try using any tools and techniques possible to simulate an attack. Yeah. So you try penetrate the system to see if you can either get access to any confidential information and anything. But in this case, you do not exploit. Yeah. In this case, we are saying you do not use the vulnerabilities that you've gotten through penetration testing to ideally steal from someone. Yeah. So once you gain access to their system, maybe the credentials, you do not take the information for yourself. Yeah. But you rather give a step-by-step analysis of what you've gotten, and ideally how of what you've gotten, and how that information can ideally help the team to come up with a solution for it. So at the end of the day, the goal of penetration testing is to identify weaknesses before they can be exploited by attackers, allowing organizations to take steps to either strengthen their defenses or know how to maneuver these issues. And it is basically an essential tool for maintaining security of a network or a system. Yeah. So for a penetration tester, at the end of the day, you have to give a report of what was done, and your report covers ideally how did you do each and everything that you had done, and what information did you get to use on the system. So I can just give me a sec to try and find a report that I did on a box we call Hack the Box, where you can train and try to do these things and show you ideally how or what a penetration test report needs to show you at the end of the day. So just give me a sec. I try find it out. Mhm. Yeah, so ideally, this is an example of a report on how it's supposed to do. So it just gives steps on how this was done. And if you have a security expert with the organization, they can basically know how to, at the end of the day, maneuver and correct it. So it just tells you the steps in which a penetration tester took to ideally get wind of anything in your system. Yeah. And what was it using? How did I, using the information that I got online, got to try and hack you at the end of the day. So yes, this is just an example of how and what penetration testing ideally is. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense also on what is penetration testing and all. So yes, that is just an example of some of the tools and techniques that you might want to use to ideally ensure that you are safe. Yeah. We have other aspects such as security operations centers that are coupled with penetration testing, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. And in this case, we are looking at aspects where you're actually combining different tools to actually create a security operation center where it monitors not only the network, but also the different resources that a company might need. So instead of a company ideally coming up with a whole security operation center, because it's quite expensive to build and to facilitate. Yeah, there are companies that actually do security operation center as a service or SOC as a service. Yeah. So what SOC as a service does is you just need to pay for the services of these people, depending on what you want to get. Yeah. How many systems do you have? How long do you want them to monitor your systems? Are they doing 24/7 monitoring, or is it an 8-hour monitoring, 12-hour monitoring? Sorry. Yeah. So depending on what you want, you just need to pay a fee for that. Then they can actually do for you a security monitoring on all your systems. In this case, you can also decide to either have them be the first line of defense whenever there is an attack, where they now mitigate any issues, what we call triaging of any security issues that are actually coming up. Or you can decide to have your own in-house team to look into it. So whenever there is an alert, they only need to do a report to you, and your internal team can then decide to to take it over and do what we call triaging. So yes, that marks the first aspect of what we wanted to learn today. The second aspect of it would be just trying to understand how do we ensure that we learn about different aspects of security. So yesterday we talked about being hacked, yeah, and ways in which we can be hacked. What are some of the examples of cybersecurity issues that we have? So today we actually want to learn what are the best practices for us in the different sectors in which we are, where we can basically understand and see this is an attack that someone is trying to do. So how do we maneuver it? Yeah, where we're going to talk about issues such as what are the best practices in access control, in phishing awareness, safety internet practice, safe internet practice, sorry, password security, public Wi-Fi risks, talk about a little bit of mobile device security, social engineering awareness, and ideally what is it? Then we close the day with data backup and recovery. Yeah. So I actually see we are about to head for break. I'd like to suggest we continue, then maybe we finish a bit earlier so that you can take the break then. I don't know if that's fine with all of us or what's the idea. Okay, thank you, Bernard.
Hello,
Yes.
it's in order, eh?
Yeah.
So you can continue probably.
Oh, yes. Or we have Anne. Anne says we take a health break. Can we then decide to take a 5 or 10 minute break? Let's do 10. Then we resume at 11 and go maybe up to around 12:40 and we finish. Okay, I think that's fine. We can do a 10-minute break, then come back. Thanks.
Yeah, that's okay, David.
Do we have to log out or we can just stay on?
10 minutes is small duration. You can just stay on.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So I think we can continue.
Yes, we can resume.
Yeah, thank you. So for the second aspect of today's session, we want to talk about the security best practices for what we have learned. Yeah. So we have basically seen examples of how do we, what are some of the techniques, tools and techniques that can actually be used. So we're gonna do videos of the same techniques with us here. Then we try and see how to ideally avoid them as we go on. So the first aspect we want to talk about today is phishing awareness. Yeah. So apparently phishing is the second most used hacking technique for individuals or for hackers, because people tend to not be keen, ideally when dealing with things like emails. So in this case, you have like 500 emails and you just want to clear all of them. So you just go on clicking, then you see something good, you click on it also, yeah, without even trying to see what is it that it's trying to say. Yeah. So phishing ideally is a technique in which an attacker sends an email or provides a link falsely claiming to be from a legitimate site to acquire a user's personal or account information. Yeah. So you're actually tricked to perform an action from an email. Then you don't look at it very keenly, and when you ideally finish and you end up providing your details, you find that you have ideally been hacked and your information has been used to maybe clear your bank account, or do something like you've borrowed a loan of how many million shillings that maybe you didn't even plan or authorized. Yeah. So when a user clicks on the link shared through the email, they are redirected to a fake web page where they are lured into sharing sensitive details. Yeah. So users often get tricked due to either lack of knowledge or being visually deceived, or either not being extra keen on the different security indicators that might be popping up from an email. So in this case, let's look at a notable example I have here for this one. So if you look at this from a glance, you might actually say that it's a legit Netflix email. Yeah, from it you can ideally see the colors are what Netflix uses if you have ever gotten a message or an email address from Netflix. And there is a scare tactic inside there. Yeah. Most of phishing emails will one start with a scare tactic. Yeah. Basically scaring you to doing something without even thinking twice. So try picture in a case where you're an apt Netflix and chill person, and it's on a Friday afternoon. You're working and you're hoping you finish your job and you head home. Yeah, where no one will disturb you and you can Netflix and yeah, the whole weekend. Then you actually get an email such as this at around 3, ideally when you're about to leave. So your head is, I want to finish this work and leave. Then you get this email. Yeah. And for instance, you were not very keen on it. Yeah. You might end up being hurt. So what are some of the indicators, yeah, that are actually shown from this email? Yes, it's a scare tactic. Please update your payment details. But the first red flag or the first security indicator that shows you need to look twice is the salutation. Yeah. So if they have your details, they cannot call you dear. One, it's not professional enough for this kind of email. And two, they should be addressing you using your name. Yeah. So if it's David, it is hi David or hello David or dear David. Yeah. So it needs to be directed to me. Yeah. Then the second aspect is we are having some trouble. Even the short formness of the we're is a bit tricky. Yeah. Because if it's something professional, you don't do short forms or have typos, maybe, for instance, if it had. But we are having some trouble with your current billing information, which is fine, you might be having. We'll try again, is something that raises an eye. Yeah. Because if you're having trouble with it, then you're having trouble. Even if you try again, it will still give you trouble. So there is no way you can try again. Yeah, especially for a big company that has billions of, is it millions of users across the world. Yeah. But in the meantime, you may want to update your details. Yeah. So if you might try again and it works, why should I update my details? Yeah, that's something I'd ask myself. Yes, the second aspect for you to notice, or the fourth in this case, aspect for you to actually notice a phishing email is it always has a catchphrase. Yeah. We want you to update your payment details, and they always give you a link. Yeah, or a picture for you to click on. They need you to at least do something from your side so that you can be directed to somewhere they want you to ideally go. Yeah. So so need help, we are here if you need it. Visit the help center or contact us now, which is fine. Then the signature at the bottom is also something else that's worrying. Your friends at Netflix. That's also not professional enough for such an email. Yeah. If it was something else that they are trying to do. For instance, they are trying to do a promotion or something, that would make sense. Yeah, because they want to ideally resonate with you from that point. But in this case, it's quite obvious that it's something serious, and that does not play along with the tone in which this email comes in. So that gives you another red flag for you to look at. And now from there, you can actually think, is it worth it or isn't it worth it? Yeah. So for me, this is not worth it. You just delete it and wait for your account to be put on hold. Then you now call them. Yeah. The other aspect will be to verify, yeah, the information with which they're actually sharing. So you don't reply to the same email that came. You can ideally use different channels. So technology, as we said, is integrated. So in this case, you can use maybe something like Twitter. They actually have a Twitter account. So you just need to look and see, are they really, is the Twitter account really the one that we need to use or something? Then from there, you ideally ask them if there is any issue. The goodness about it is they'll be prompt on Twitter and they will give you accurate information about your account. So kindly note that you can also get pseudo accounts on Twitter for the different companies like Netflix. You might find there like 3 or 4. So the good thing about what Elon Musk has done for us on Twitter is he has given 3 types of Twitter accounts. So right now we have gold, gray. Gray are for governmental personalities. Yeah. So for instance, if right now you look at Ruto's or President Ruto's official account, you'll actually see it's actually color gray. Yeah. For any organizations that use accounts, for instance, if you check like Strathmore's Twitter account, it's actually gold. Yeah. So that's an organizational account. So I am hoping Twitter also has, Netflix also has something which is goldish in color. Then for the rest of us who are not dignitaries or we are not organizations, we're actually given Twitter blue. So it's blue in color. So that can be used to verify if you're actually talking to the right people, even when you actually change the channel and use a different one. Then we have another example with the same issues. Dear valued customer of Trusted Bank, if you know I am a bank with a member of your bank, then you know my information is trying to be accessed, then you need to address me by name. So that's a red flag. So we have received notice that you recently attempted to withdraw the amount from your checking account while in another country, and they give you the dollars. So at least what I know nowadays is if such a message is sent to you, they actually do a map of where you are with a pin that shows ideally where you are. So that increases the oomph of this might be legit. Yeah, but if this information is not correct, someone unknown may have accessed your account. As a safety measure, please visit our website via the link to verify your personal information. Just as I said, you always have something to do. Yeah, so they give you a link. If you look at the link very well, it's not even secure. Yeah, it is HTTP. It doesn't have the S, which is the security aspect to the link. Yeah, then the link is directly taking you to a certain page, yeah, which should not ideally be the case. Yeah, it should ideally take you to their trusted.com bank link. Use your credentials to log in, then move from that login page to the page which you want to ideally access. So this that it's taking you from one point to the next without you having to input any security features in it, then that becomes a red flag that you need to look at. But ideally, if you're keen enough and you look at the link and the beginning of the link has no S security aspect on it, then you don't even need to look at the rest of it. Yeah. Then once you have done this, our fraud department will work to resolve the discrepancy. That also is very vague. Yeah. How does your fraud department need to work on something? I've done something. Yeah. And yet it's not a fraud case. Yeah. It's just something that maybe if it's true, the bank manager and myself can actually deal with it and we see how to resolve the issue. Yeah. So those are some of the red flags that you can look at whenever you're checking out a website, sorry, an email to see if it's a phishing email. So how do you identify a phishing campaign? I think most of these I've actually elaborated. When you receive an email, text, or phone call asking you to share personal information, basically you should be thinking twice before actually doing that. Yeah, the better option would be to ensure that you're 100% sure the information that you're giving is going to the right person and cannot be intercepted. Then you need to ask yourself questions such as, would a legitimate organization ask you to share information in the way in which they're asking? If no, kindly don't send. We actually acknowledge that sometimes it's difficult to tell, as cyber criminals have become skilled and crafty and susceptible phishing messages in crafting and susceptible phishing messages that appear almost legitimate. Yeah. So yes, it might be hard, but if you're keen enough, yeah, you'll actually realize that things such as the message always involves a threat. Yeah. Your account is being put on hold. Your bank details have been compromised. Someone has withdrawn some cash from you. Yeah, all that. The second aspect is the sender's email address might look suspicious. Yeah. Whereby the person sending the message is not the account that is sending the message. Yeah. That is something else you can look at. Spelling or grammatical errors in the message is something else that you can look at to ideally tell you that this can be a phishing attack being done against you. Then there is always a suspicious link, yeah, or something that you need to do for them to actually get the information. So what do you do in case you get? One, do not reply. Yeah. Don't click on any links in the email. And also do not open any attachments if there are attachments to the email. Yeah. Then you can reach out to legitimate parties and ask if they are the ones that are contacting you. And you can use a different channel, just as I have said, depending on what channel you feel it's way safer for that organization, then you can ideally use it. Then at the end of the day, never email your personal or sensitive information via email. Yeah. So unless it's very paramount for you to actually do it, it's better you just jump into maybe a call with the people and you get, or you just need to walk to the offices, and if there is an issue, you change whatever is happening. Yeah, that will be the case. So to solidify that, I have a 4-minute email video that we can just look at and see what phishing is like. Then we are gonna look at one where phishing is actually done. So phishing can be in three forms. Phishing, which we're talking about, is ideally an attack through email. Yeah. Phishing is basically an attack where you're given a call and someone asks you to share your information via voice over IP or a call. Then mishing or smishing is ideally a phishing attack that is done via SMS. Yeah. So let's just do a simple elaboration of phishing. Yep. Then
Jane is relaxing at home when she receives an email from a bank that asks her to update her credit card PIN in the next 24 hours as a security measure. Judging the severity of the message, Jane follows the link provided in the email. On delivering her current credit card PIN and supposedly updated one, the website became unresponsive, which prompted her to try sometime later. However, after a couple of hours, she noticed a significant purchase from a random website on that same credit card, which she never authorized. Frantically contacting the bank, Jane realized the original email was a counterfeit or a fake message with a malicious link that entailed credit card fraud. This is a classic example of a phishing attack. Phishing attacks are a type of social engineering where a fraudulent message is sent to a target on the premise of arriving from a trusted source. Its basic purpose is to trick the victim into revealing sensitive information like passwords and payment information. It's based on the word phishing, which works on the concept of baits. If a supposed victim catches the bait, the attack can go ahead, which in our case makes Jane the fish and the phishing emails the bait. If Jane never opened the malicious link or was cautious about the email authenticity, an attack of this nature would have been relatively ineffective. But how does the hacker gain access to these credentials? The phishing attack starts with a fraudulent message, which can be transmitted via email or chat applications. Even using SMS conversations to impersonate legitimate sources is known as smishing, which is a specific category of phishing attacks. Irrespective of the manner of transmission, the message targets the victim in a way that coaxes them to open a malicious link and provide critical information on the requisite website. More often than not, the websites are designed to look as authentic as possible. Once the victims submit information using the link, be it a password or credit card details, the data is sent to the hacker who designed the email and the fake website, giving him complete control over the account whose password was just provided. Often carried out in campaigns where an identical phishing mail is sent to thousands of users, the rate of success is relatively low, but never zero. Between 2013 and 2015, corporate giants like Facebook and Google were tricked off of $100 million due to an extensive phishing campaign, where a known common associate was impersonated by the hackers. Apart from credit access, some of these campaigns target the victim device and install malware when clicked on the malicious links, which can later function as a botnet or a target for ransomware attacks. There is no single formula, for there are multiple categories of phishing attacks. The issue with Jane, where the hacker stole her fake credentials, falls under the umbrella of deceptive phishing. A general email is sent out to thousands of users in this category, hoping some of them fall prey to this scam. Spear phishing, on the other hand, is a bit customized version. The targets are researched before being sent an email. For example, if you never had a Netflix subscription, sending you an email that seems like the Netflix team sends it becomes pointless. This is a potential drawback of deceptive phishing techniques. On the other hand, a simple screenshot of a Spotify playlist being shared on social media indicates a probable point of entry. The hacker can send counterfeit messages to the target user while implying the source of such messages being Spotify, tricking them into sharing private information. Since the hacker already knows the target uses Spotify, the chances of victims taking the bait increase substantially. For more important targets like CEOs and people with a fortune on their back, the research done is tenfold, which can be called a case of whaling. The hackers prepare and wait for the right moment to launch their phishing attack, often to steal industry secrets for rival companies or sell them off at a higher price. Apart from just emails, farming focuses on fake websites that resemble their original counterparts as much as possible. The prevalent method is to use domain names like Facebook with a single O or YouTube with no E. These are mistakes that people make when typing the full URL in the browser, leading them straight to a counterfeit web page, which can fool them into submitting private data. A few more complex methods exist to drive people onto fake websites, like ARP spoofing and DNS cache poisoning, but they are rarely carried out due to time and resource constraints. Now that we know how phishing attacks work, let's look at ways to prevent ourselves from becoming victims. While the implications of a phishing attack can be extreme, protecting yourself against these is relatively straightforward. Jane could have saved herself from credit card fraud had she checked the link in the email for authenticity, and that it redirected to a secure website that runs on the HTTPS protocol. Even suspicious messages shouldn't be entertained. One must also refrain from entering private information on random websites or pop-up windows, irrespective of how legitimate they seem. It is also recommended to use secure anti-phishing browser extensions like Cloudfish to sniff out malicious emails from legitimate ones. The best way to prevent phishing is browsing the internet with care and being on alert for malicious attempts at all times. So here is a question for you. If both me and my friend receive this.
Yeah, so that is an example of phishing. Then let's check an example of phishing using voice to finish us up with this.
DEF CON is the biggest hacker convention of the year. It's a place where thousands of hackers come to hear talks to demonstrate their newest hacks. It's actually a place that's so dangerous to be on the internet that they tell you to turn off the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth on your phone. And they tell you not to use the ATMs too, because those could be hacked as well. This is the DEF CON ballroom. It's sort of the main room where things are happening. And it's pretty wild. I think this is car hacking village. This car is locked. Can you get me in? I'll unlock it for you. Should be good. Hacking is no longer like this fringe activity. And if you are at DEF CON, there's a good chance that you're here because you want to learn what could happen to you or your company.
Anyone here first time in the SEC yet?
I invited Chris to hack me with his team, but they're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
We help people with human security issues by testing vulnerabilities for like a network test, but it's for the people network. We test those vulnerabilities, see where the holes are, and then help people learn so they can patch them.
Can we try some of this? Can we try some?
Yeah,
See if it works.
yeah, we probably could have our star visitor here make some phone calls as.
Let's do it.
Sure. You want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation. And basically, what you do is use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it. Who are you gonna call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider
Okay.
and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna spoof from your number, so it's gonna look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. Log into our account for uses information. And I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
Gmail.com.
Jessica gets my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message. Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account. Okay, my
Jessica uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
name, 5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry. So there's no password on my account right now. Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my
Thank
password.
you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's just my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yeah.
I really thought that my cell phone company would protect me. I mean, like, this is the most basic stuff, and they're not doing it. And if they're not doing it, you know, all these other businesses aren't doing it either.
So yes, that is an example of a phishing attack. Yeah, basically voice solicitation. Like from the video, you can ideally see the gentleman's information was shared by the company. Yeah. Through a phishing call, just by someone soliciting the person on the end of the call. Yeah. So that is what phishing is. And ideally, we have seen how to maneuver it. Maybe we can go on and say, what is safe internet practice? So basically, this is being knowledgeable about the nature of the potential threats that you could face while browsing the internet, and the way scammers will try to reach you ideally. Yeah. And then ensuring that you ideally know what and how to maneuver and get to basically browse the internet safely. Yeah. So in this case, the way scammers tries to reach us is also evolving. Yeah. And we need to be alert on the internet scams and avoid dangerous situations. Some of these practices that we need to learn include being careful with what we download. Yeah. So ideally, most of us like to get free software, yeah, from different places where we don't want to buy. For instance, you want to get a Windows Windows 10. Yeah. Instead of actually buying it for 17,000 shillings, right now for a legit one, you go to Pirate Bay, yeah, or the uTorrents, and you end up downloading one. Yes, you get a valid Windows software, but at the end of the day, it might be a Trojan horse, just as we said yesterday, where you actually downloading it, and at the back end of things, it's also downloading things on its own. Yeah. So just being careful with what we download online, then scanning downloaded files using either antiviruses before opening them is ideally important, and especially if they are from untrusted sources. The good thing is if you have antiviruses, be it from the network side of things like Chrome, or on your devices, they tend to scan all files. Yeah. So in case it gives you an alert or an issue with it, and some of us like ignoring and just say, you let it run. Yeah. It might at the end of the day prove to be more detrimental to your internet life than you might want to enjoy. Yeah. So the other aspect will be just being mindful of social media privacy. Basically, what do we share? How do we share it? Because what we call reconnaissance in penetration testing or hacking is mostly done online. Yeah. So using your social media accounts, most of us like taking things taking photos of the food that we are taking, and you're in a restaurant, and maybe your ATM card is just next to your plate. So the picture you take takes, yes, the food, but also the ATM number. That's something one can use. From online, you're actually sharing your details. Then you also receiving friend requests from people whom you don't know. Then once you send, they receive a request, they can actually look at your profile. They actually see your date of birth. They actually see maybe where you reside, where you're born, for instance, if you placed it there. Then all this information can ideally be coupled together to create an attack, ideally, that is targeted to you, either a spear phishing attack, just as we said, and you end up being hacked through basically the information that you share online. Yeah. So we also have aspects such as educating yourself. And in this case, we are just trying to stay informed about the latest online threats and scams, that common cybersecurity practices to stay safe online. So here we are saying, just like what we are doing today, we're educating ourselves on the different aspects of cybersecurity. And we are looking at aspects such as what is the probable places or ways in which we can be hacked. What are the probable ways to basically ensure that we are safe online, like what we are talking about today. Then we can also use secure sites. Yeah. So there was a question yesterday about cookies and all. And we actually say the cookies actually depend on how secure the site is. Yeah. So looking for this aspect over here, the HTTP that has an S and a padlock before, is very important to ensuring that we actually use secure sites. So to answer the question that was asked yesterday about secure socket layer encryption, so this is ideally how these things are done. So for instance, you want, you're creating a website, yeah, and you want to ensure that it's secure. So after you finish, you actually send the sample of your email with the domain and everything, website, sorry, with the domain and everything to a certificate authority. Yeah. So a certificate authority checks the different, checks it against the CVEs, CVS score, that is the Common Vulnerability Service Score. Yeah. And if it's given a clean bill of health, that is ideally it is secure and everything, you only need to pay a certain amount depending on what information are you transferring from point A to point B in your website, how big is your website, like the traffic in terms of how many people will actually be using it and all. Then you actually pay. Then they actually give you a key. Yeah. We have talked about encryption. Yeah. So they actually give you a key. Yeah. That is embedded as the S aspect of it. So that key becomes an encryption algorithm for your application. Yeah. So once that is embedded, it's like a certificate that you only need to refer. So anytime someone is actually trying to get information from your website, yeah, it calls the certificate, which now acts as an algorithm or an encryption algorithm that encrypts any information that you'll be sending from point one to point B, that is from the client side to the server, and from the server back to the client, and you end up getting a secure browsing aspect in the terms of HTTPS. Yeah. Then from there we have using of a secure browser. So there are different browsers that will actually give you different issues. Yeah. So for instance, there are security extensions for something like Safari, for something like Chrome. Microsoft Edge is actually doing good nowadays. Yeah. as it comes up, as they try to build up the different aspects. When it comes to things like Firefox and all, they might be a little bit tricky because at least I know a Firefox application web browser can ideally accept, can easily accept a proxy. Yeah, a proxy is just a machine between your network and the network outside that translates what you say from your machine to the outside world, and what the outside world says is translated to your machine. Yeah, so that's what a proxy. So a proxy can actually be installed in your web browser, and someone can ideally sniff any information that you're passing from your web browser to ideally wherever you want it to go. Yeah. So what are some of the risks and dangers of oversharing? Yeah. So before we get to this, let me just share with you one more video on secure online sharing. Yeah. And we have it here. Yes. So this is the one. So ideally, the video is by my Trend Micro, just elaborating for us what is, why is it bad to keep on oversharing everything that we are doing on social media that we do not have any privacy.
Yeah, I don't remember you, but I'll add you anyway. All right, so we got a bunch of product managers, a few marketing managers, and one account director. And my network is growing like crazy. Soon, my career is going to take off. Well, you don't believe me? All right, check this out. Do you know who Ron Ferguson is? He added me to his network. Think about it. I'm Rick Ferguson. No relation to Ron. And certainly no relation to this guy. He's a criminal hiding behind a fake profile to collect valuable information. This is Dave. You may have noticed he's really happy to extend his social network. He's reckless though. He accepts almost every invitation, including Ron's fake one. Now, this is pretty basic stuff. Anyone can do it. Ron's looking through Dave's posts, comments, photos. You can see where he went to school and who with, who he socializes with, what he does in his free time, even what projects he's working on. Dave's profile is an open book. Ron can see whatever he needs and use it to his advantage. Dave is an attacker's dream. He's almost addicted to sharing every detail of his life with hundreds of strangers. Sound like anyone you know? We all use social networks, and if you're careless, it becomes very easy to gather this much data. Dave might think it's fun sharing everything that he does, but to people like Ron, it's a golden opportunity. They take advantage of your oversharing. Before you know it, they have access to your entire life. And even though you're giving it away for free, you may well end up paying for it. Ron gathers intelligence on an organization through its employees and uses it to his advantage. Right now, he's writing an email to Dave's boss with a very interesting proposition. A simple online search has also turned up documents which reveal exactly which version of Office software the target organization is using. Embedding malicious code in his fake spreadsheet is the work of seconds. In fact, there's an app for that.
You might think this kind of thing only happens in films, but in reality, most attacks use social engineering, creating a credible pretext to fool the victim into doing something unwise. A momentary lapse of judgment, and Ron has the access that he needed. He moves carefully through the network, searching for more systems and data. This won't be a quick hack. Ron wants long-term access to sensitive data that he can sell on the criminal underground. Maybe it's a credit card database. Maybe it's a project in which the company has heavily invested. In the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it could have been prevented. Unfortunately for Dave, the investigation discovered his social media posts and followed the trail of evidence that led to the breach. Remember, you're just as responsible for the security of your company's data as you are for your own. Building your social network can of course be valuable, but don't connect with just anyone. Think twice before you post. If you wouldn't be happy shouting it in the middle of a crowded street, then don't post it online. And when you do share, make sure you tightly control the audience. Follow your company's security policies. And of course, be careful of unsolicited messages or content that you receive. Most important of all, just use your head. Don't be a Dave. I'm Rick Ferguson from Trend Micro. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. So that is another aspect of why you should not overshare online, because information that you share can be used not only to hack you, but also your friends and your organization. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the dangers and risks of oversharing. We have seen a few of them in the video, but one would be identity theft. So basically, oversharing can lead to your information being stolen and someone ideally impersonate you to open maybe fraudulent accounts and carry out other financial scams using your name and your credentials. Then cyber stalking and harassment. So oversharing can also reveal too much information that will make people be vulnerable to cyber stalking and harassment. And people can actually use that information to track your location, invade your privacy, or even target you for or target the person for unwanted attention, ideally. Yeah. So cyber stalking and harassment is a big issue that is happening right now. And most of it is being propagated by what we share online and how much information we actually give to people in our social media platforms. Then online scams and phishing. So ideally, you can see from the video or about on Trend Micro. Dev's boss was ideally hacked because of online phishing. Yeah. Where Dave actually shared a lot of information. Then the information was actually used to target his boss with it. Yeah. So that can also be a danger. Reputational damage. Yeah. Try picture what Dave was doing by posting that his boss was hacked. And his boss now needs to go to a stakeholders meeting where he needs to actually rouse the stakeholders to give him either funds or get in more stakeholders for the business, how that will be detrimental not only to him, but also to the organization in which he leads. Yeah. Then physical security risks. Oversharing can actually tell people where you are and can ideally tell people how to enter into your house. For instance, if I allude to the video that we have just seen, Dave ended up sharing his information, yeah, online. That can actually be used as a security risk. So try picture if that was maybe, let's say, the key card information of maybe the hotel in which he stays in and the number of the room in which he stays in. It becomes easier to target him when he's ideally going home. Yeah, because you just waylay him on the road and he's definitely gonna be passing there at one time or the other. Yeah, then you might be posting that you're leaving the country and you're very happy about leaving the country or leaving your place, going somewhere else. But there is a burglar who's waiting for you to leave so that he can have a field day with you home. Yeah. They end up stealing from you and doing all physical security damage to your property. Then data mining and privacy concerns. Basically, most social media platforms will end up collecting and analyzing vast amount of user data to fuel targeted advertising and personalized content. So some time back, Mark Zuckerberg was actually sued because of data mining, whereby he was using Facebook to ideally collect people's data, and he wasn't giving a clear picture of where this information was being used. Yeah, so that is also a risk that you pose when you overshare online or on social media platforms that can be detrimental to you at the end of the day. Then social engineering attacks can also be done. Yeah, so criminals can use the information you share on social media to manipulate and deceive you in social engineering attacks. Yeah, so they might impersonate you because they have realized you're someone who trusts a lot, or you're someone who loves this aspect of things, and they use that to ideally manipulate and try to retrieve more sensitive information from you. And at the end of the day, you actually get hacked through that. Yeah. So the other aspect would be password sharing. Yeah. Or password security, and basically refers to the practices for establishing and verifying authorized access to data, devices, and accounts. So the question here we are asking, how secure is your password? Yeah, so you might be using the internet and you might be using the internet, and each and every time you're creating a password, like right now, if you try to change your password on Google, it will ideally tell you to do a strong password, yeah, whereby it needs to be unique. It needs to be to have different characters, alphanumeric characters, symbols, and all. Yeah. So strong passwords and unique passwords for different accounts are crucial for maintaining online security. And here's why. One, it protects against unauthorized access. Yeah. So whereas you remember last time we said that you can never be 100% secure online, there is one point that you will be hacked. Yeah. So bulking up on your security aspect is an important aspect that you need to have. And one aspect of it is password security, where you're creating different unique passwords for different accounts, so that when one is compromised, the others are basically secure. You know? And the other one is protecting against data breaches. So passwords are basically the gateway or the padlocks to any security feature that we need in terms of data and everything. Yeah. So once you expose your login credentials for the other accounts as well, all your information from the different accounts can actually be shared in what we call being pwned, PWNED. Yeah. So some security tips on it. One, do not use passwords that can be found in a dictionary. So there is one attack that we call, from the security aspect, a dictionary attack, where we'll just look for, we'll create a list of passwords that are basically known from dictionaries, from names, a combination of only numbers that are consecutive, maybe 1, 2, 3, or 8, 9, 10, 12, yeah, something like that. So if you use something like that, then there is a probability that your password can be hacked and it's weak. Have a password change policy of up to 30 to 45 days. Yeah. So after every 30 to 45 days, you can always change your password to ensure that your passwords are ideally fresh. Others go to around 60 days, that's around 2 months, which is ideally fine. Yeah. But staying with a password for about 6 months, 1 year is quite detrimental to your cybersecurity posture. Then make passwords hard to get, but easy for you to remember by using 8 to 12 characters, alphanumeric characters, basically. You can do a combination of uppercase and lowercase letters. You can do numbers and symbols in such, yeah. Then do not use personal information such as birth dates, spouses or child's or pet names to create your passwords. Yeah, because that is ideally very easy for someone to what we call brute force and get your passwords. Then enable multi-factor authentication for account login sessions wherever you can. That will be very important. Then use reputable password managers for storing your passwords. For those of us who use ideally something like Chrome ideally comes with a password vault, yeah, that we actually use. Now, the good thing is it is secure if your master password is ideally secure, yeah. The password in which you use to access the different passwords will actually depend on how secure is your password manager, yeah. For instance, if you decide to buy something like a password vault, there are different password vaults that you can look at. It also comes down to how do you secure your master password. So let me just give you an example of how best you can create a password that is easy for you to remember but hard for someone to guess. And it basically has all this very easily, yeah. So what we do suggest is, let me just bring up our document again. What we do suggest is you come up with mostly a phrase or a combination of 2 or 3 words that you can easily remember, but you play around with. So for instance, I'm looking at something like I am responsible. Yeah. I for instance, yeah, I am responsible is something that you can remember very easily from your aspect, and it can be a very good, strong password if you basically understand how to play around with it. So for me, I can actually say 1 at I do R3 SP 0 NS I, yeah. Then B can be ideally capital. Then I can say something like this, and I do that. Yeah. So ideally, this becomes my password. Very easy to remember. I am responsible, but very hard for someone to guess. Why? Because it actually meets the threshold of alphanumeric characters such as numbers. I have 1, 3, 0. I have characters such as at and exclamation mark. Then I have a mixture of uppercase letters and lowercase letters. And it's ideally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's ideally 14 characters, yeah, which is very hard for someone to guess on brute force. But at the same time, it's ideally easy for me to ideally remember. And I can do such things for different passwords or different accounts, yeah, bordering what I like, yeah. Because remember, at the end of the day, our human minds are characterized or are built to have ideas that relate to what are we facing at the moment. Maybe it's a movie that we have been watching and it was very good, or it's a song or anything. You can use all that, but you ensure that you mix and match, yeah, so that it's not just a word in the dictionary, yeah. It can be a phrase that you can combine to be a word, and it gives you a very good password at the end of the day, yeah. Yeah, so yes, that's it for passwords. Then from there, we want to talk about public Wi-Fi risks. So public Wi-Fi's can basically expose your computer to virus. And it can also be used to attack your system and get your information through an attack that we call man-in-the-middle attack. So basically, due to its lack of security, a public Wi-Fi connection may be compromised by a hacker, allowing them to inject into your device any malware. Yeah. So we should be very careful about accessing public Wi-Fi's, especially in different places. I'd advise having passwords with Wi-Fi's with passwords that are ideally shared with people, yeah, other than just having a free public Wi-Fi, even in our public offices. It's way better for you to actually, right now we have what we call scan capability for passwords. You don't need to share the password. You only need to have that QR code for scanning. Yeah. So if anyone wants to join the network, they can scan it. Yeah. And it automatically gives them access. And they, at the end of the day, get access to the Wi-Fi other than having public Wi-Fi's. Yeah. So if the Wi-Fi is free, you need to think again. Yeah. On the same. Some of the common risks associated with using public Wi-Fi include man-in-the-middle attacks, yeah, where a person can ideally intercept communication between your device and the network, and it allows them to eavesdrop on any conversation that you have in the network. Then unencrypted connections. Basically, public Wi-Fi's often lack proper encryption, yeah, making your data vulnerable to interception. So if there is no encryption, that means your data is being transmitted as plain text. The way you are typing it is the same way it is being transmitted from your phone to your bank account, yeah. So if someone sniffs and gets wind of your information, then their work is very easy, yeah, because they don't need to do anything else on that information. Then cyber criminals can actually create rogue Wi-Fi networks with legitimate sounding names to trick users into connecting. So in this case is where we talk about attacks such as rogue access points, yeah, where you can ideally walk to a place with free or public Wi-Fi or free Wi-Fi, and you go there and you create your own Wi-Fi setup. So you know how our phones ideally work is they tap into the strongest Wi-Fi around. Yeah. So if you get to a place where there are free Wi-Fis and someone comes and creates his own free Wi-Fi that is stronger than the legitimate one in this case, they can actually prompt you to use their Wi-Fi to do whatever you want, maybe make a bank purchase or send you information or messages, and they can intercept that information and read it at the end of the day. So how do we mitigate against these public Wi-Fi risks? One, avoid accessing sensitive information through public or free Wi-Fi. Yeah, such as online banking and any personal information you might ideally be wanting to share that is sensitive to you. Then disable auto connect from your phones or your machines so that it prevents unintentional connection of insecure public networks. Yeah. So in a case where your Wi-Fi is ideally on auto connect, if it gets to any Wi-Fi that it can connect, then it will connect. Yeah. So you might be thinking you may be using your bundles, and at the end of the day, maybe you're using the public Wi-Fi to do whatever you want to do, and you end up sharing your information online. Yeah. Then verify the network's authenticity with legitimate staff or reliable sources before connecting. So ideally be cautious of the networks with generic or misplaced names. Yeah. So the other good thing is you can just ask them how secure is their network before you ideally start using it. If they have an idea of the security or the authenticity of their network, then they'll tell you. If they cannot, then you don't need to ideally use it. Better you look for an alternative method to actually join online. You can also use VPNs. Yeah. So there is a catch to this. Yes, VPNs are actually good when you're using public Wi-Fi's because they will give you a sense of security that no one can ideally crack or hack into. But it also depends. The flip side of it is that it depends on what type of VPN are you using. Is it a free VPN or is it a paid VPN? So most of us will actually go for free VPNs, yeah, thinking that they'll actually solve our issues. And I want to believe there is nothing free on earth. Yeah, you're actually giving and someone is taking something from you. So at the end of the day, you are using a free VPN and you think you're secure, and maybe someone is mining your data on the other side because the provider might have access to any information that is passing through his or her free VPN. Yeah. So that is all about public Wi-Fi and why we need to mitigate different issues. So the next is mobile device security. So given how smartphones have become an integral part of our society or our lives, mobile security has become a crucial aspect of the digital landscape. Yeah. So in this case, we are saying that we ideally need to improve on the security aspects of our features. And we can use different measures that have been designed to protect sensitive information stored on or transmitted by mobile devices. Yeah? So here we can talk about putting in measures to ideally ensure that we do not share sensitive information, or our machines or our phones can ideally not be hacked. And to do this, or to enhance the mobile device security, we can basically look at things such as strong device locks, yeah, that can be used to prevent unauthorized access to your device, yeah. That will be one aspect. The other one will be, do not download apps from untrusted sources. So you only need to download applications from trusted sources such as Google Play Store for the Android guys, iOS or App Store for iOS guys, Microsoft for those of us who are still using Microsoft phones, yeah, because they always do a security check, and they ensure that the applications that use this, that are uploaded on these platforms, are ideally secure, and they meet a certain threshold for them to be uploaded in the different stores, yeah, or the different application stores. The other one will be to review any permissions. So ideally check the permissions requested by an app before installing. Now the issue with this, that most companies, at least I know Google Play Store is looking into the aspects where an application forces you to accept even permissions that it doesn't need for it to work in your phone. Yeah, so that is a catch to it, but at least I know for the latest application that's actually coming up or being developed, Play Store is trying to come up with a way to ensure that these applications, before they actually uploaded on Play Store, they have gone through the scrutiny, and only the applications that and only the permissions that the application will require to ideally function and function well are the ones that are allowed. All the others are actually dropped. So just looking at the permissions you can give an application will actually also be important. From there, we're talking about you can enable Find My Device or Find My iPhone for those of us using iPhone, yeah. And you Simon, kindly help me mute Jean. Or Jean, if you can hear me, kindly mute. Yeah, so while that's happening, we can maybe continue. Yeah, so you can ideally use Find My iPhone or Find My Phone to enable device tracking in case there is any issues, and you can also use it to do remote wiping features provided by the mobile operating system in case of anything. Yeah, so that will form what we call mobile device security. Then from there, we can look at social engineering. So ideally, from most of the videos that we have looked at today, they had the aspect of social engineering where they could manipulate people using different formats. For instance, phishing is ideally a social engineering attack. The video that we saw of Dave oversharing online is a social engineering attack. So how do we ensure that we are social engineering aware of anything that comes. So social engineering ideally is the art of manipulating people to divulge sensitive information so that you can use it to perform malicious actions in the different places that you might want. So these techniques exploit the human psychology and rely on deception and manipulation. So social engineering basically looks at you're trying to manipulate the desire, the trust, basically human feelings and human interaction. Yeah. So we have an example of pretexting, which involves creating a false scenario of or trying to manipulate individuals into diverging information by performing or coming up with a fake scenario for them to ideally use. So a very good example would be phishing, which is a type of social engineering. Wishing, smishing can also be one. We have what we call tailgating. So tailgating is where an attacker follows an authorized person into a restricted area by exploiting their lack of attention. Yeah. In systems or in computers, a good example will be the point where, let's say you're working on your computer, then you get a phone call. Yeah. Then you leave the computer without logging it off, and you walk out to actually receive a phone call and it's still on. Then someone can just come in, maybe the phone call was like 5 minutes. Yeah. In a span of 5 minutes, they might have done whatever they needed to do in your machine, and they left. Yeah. So that becomes a form of tailgating. Yeah. The other aspect would be piggybacking. And piggybacking is basically riding on that person's ability to help. So in a case where maybe, let's say you're walking into your office and you meet someone who's well-dressed and they are like, kindly, I have a meeting with you guys or with your CEO, and I don't have a key. So kindly let me in. So since you're good, you swipe your key and the door opens and he goes in with you, then that's piggybacking. Yeah. In terms of our devices, a case where someone comes in and they say, or a colleague comes in and say, my password has expired and I need to upload this document, and it will take a few minutes for me and I'm still in a hurry. Kindly allow me to use your machine to basically just send this email to someone, then I leave. Then you log into your machine, then you walk out maybe to grab a cup of maybe water or a glass of water or maybe a cup of tea while he's doing it. Then he does whatever they want to do. Yeah. So that is a social engineering technique called piggybacking. We have shoulder surfing, and this is ideally where someone just overlooks your shoulder and they can read or they can see the movement of your hands, or if your screen is not, or the password is being typed in plain text, they can ideally see your password. Then after you leave, they come and use that password to ideally attack you. Then we have what we call dumpster diving. So most of us tend to write different things on paper. Yeah. And you stick it in sticky notes in your office and in different places. Then maybe when the cleaner comes in the morning or in the evening and they're cleaning, they actually throw all that into the dustbin. So you might find maybe you have your passwords there, you have your sensitive information that you had written, and it's thrown in the dustbin. Then all an attacker needs to do is go comb through the dustbin, get the different types of information that they can get from the papers that you have sent, thrown ideally, and they can use that information to gain more information and maybe hack your organization or yourself through that. Yeah. So how do we prevent social engineering attack? Basically, being cautious of unsolicited communications and avoiding clicking on suspicious link or opening attachments from unknown sources. That is if it comes to the aspect of phishing. Yeah. Then verify the legitimacy of the requests or information by contacting the organization or person through official channels. Yeah, we have discussed that. And being mindful of the information you share online and on social media platforms to limit potential for attackers to gather details for targeted attacks. Then, yeah, so these are some of the examples in which you can ideally use them. For something like tailgating, piggybacking, you ensure that you're keen on whom you're letting into the organization maybe, or into your machine and what they'll need to do. Most of the time, for instance, if it is your machine, it's good to, for piggybacking, it's good to have a different account and time. You can give them that different account that does not have anything, so that once they actually use it, you can come back and look at what they do ideally and you can clean it up. Yes, then when it comes to the next aspect of data backup and recovery, this is very important for cybersecurity. Yeah, so backups are an essential component and a robust of any robust cybersecurity strategy, because they serve as safeguards against any data loss due to various factors, such as hardware failure, accident, deletion, malware attacks, or natural disasters. So I remember when we actually said you're never 100% secure. Yeah. At one point, you might be attacked. At one point, you might also have hardware failures because it's technology. Someone might have deleted information either knowingly or unknowingly, and you need to ensure that the business continues at the end of the day. Yeah, we do not stop the business from moving forward because maybe Dev from finance decided to click on a ransomware email, yeah, or a phishing email that brought up a malware, a ransomware attack. Yeah. So by regular backing up your data, you can minimize the impact of such incidents and ensure there is availability and integrity to your valuable information. So once you have regular backups, you can always fall back to where the system was actually good and working. And then from there, you can, while you're working on restoring what was the issue, you can always continue with the business as if nothing had ideally happened. Yeah. So why do we need regular backups? Yeah, because they are a protection against data loss. Yeah. So in case maybe you're attacked with something like ransomware, they act as a backup. Yeah, they are a mitigation against ransomware attacks. So if in case you have a backup and you guys have been attacked by a ransomware, the impact won't be as bad. Yeah, so that you'll now stop thinking of we need to get our data back for us to continue. And we also need to ensure that the information is not shared, public PII, personal identifiable information is not shared out. Yeah. But if you have regular backups, then that means the business can always continue. Yeah. So the only place that you need to work around is how do we ensure that maybe if we had personal identifiable information, that is not leaked. And that's where ideally you come up with issues to such as, do we need to pay, do we need not to pay the attackers, depending on the sensitivity of the information. Then it's actually good for disaster recovery. You never know what might happen. Yeah, and you might need to recover your information. Then accidental deletion and human errors. This is something that can happen to anyone and every one of us. Yeah. So having regular backups reduces the risk for that. Then backup and recovery options. Basically, we can use cloud storage as a backup recovery. Yeah. So here your data is stored remotely on servers and maintained by your service provider. So the goodness about this is, one, it reduces your cost. So where you had to buy more servers to ensure that they are in a secure premise, and you need to have CCTVs, you need to have fences, you needed to have maybe key cards installed so that you know who's going into your server at what time. You needed to have physical personnel like security guards. The resources such as electricity or energy to regulate the temperatures of this is basically removed from you, and you actually get storage as a service, yeah, from the people. And in this case, it's easily accessible. You have automated backups. It has data redundancy so that in case one of the backups actually fail, there is another backup that can actually give you information. Then it's scalable. Yeah. If today you needed to input more space into your storage, you only need to pay for that extra instead of buying a whole other server. So try picture in a case where you're actually using maybe 100 gigabyte server, yeah, and the information that you have today goes to 105 gigabytes, yeah. So that means if you're using on premise, you'll need to buy another, maybe if the list is maybe 30 GB or 50 GB server, you'll need to buy a whole 50 GB just to add 5 GB of data on it. And maybe after 2 weeks, the 5 GB will have reduced to the 105 will have reduced to 95, and you scale it down. So the goodness of scalability is you can increase and decrease. So if decrease, you pay less. If it increase, you add a little more on whatever you had. Then you can also do external hard drives. So external hard drives are physical devices that connect to your computer or network, and they provide additional storage location for your data. So here, this is very good because it's portable, so you can go with it anywhere. It's offline, so you don't need to worry about being hacked or anything, and you have control to whom you're giving that information or not. Now, the only issue is if you leave it anyhow and anywhere, it can ideally be used to, someone can actually get information from it, and you might not necessarily know if someone got the information and what information they ideally got. Then we have what we call network attached storage. So these are devices that are dedicated to store files that are connected to your local network. Yeah. So they offer shared storage space for multiple devices. So this is just like a repository in your local area network or your LAN, where all of you can ideally save your details at one place. And the privileges is that since it is centralized, security is much easier, yeah, and the devices can be backed up easily. Instead of having 10 different backups for 10 different users or devices, you only need to have one backup for this one centralized storage. It also has redundancy because it gives you the ability to create more than one backup, yeah, and it also enhances collaboration between all the devices that are using that backup, yeah. So here we are actually asking, we have learned about the attacks, we have learned about the tools. Now, what do we do if we learn of an attack? What are some of the best practices to do in case you don't know how to go about it? And this is where reporting incidents actually come in. So one thing I have come to realize in the industry is most people fear accepting they have been hacked. Yeah. And they end up staying or putting it under the radar, and it ends up affecting them more. Yeah. So it's ideally good to report incidents. Yeah. But getting away of reporting it so that it does not damage your reputation becomes a very important aspect. Yeah. So in case you ideally maybe find out that you might have clicked on a phishing email, yeah, maybe without you knowing or something, it's just good to go to your security department and tell them what has happened and how you did it, so that they can take prompt action on whatever is ideally happening. Yeah. So benefits of reporting incidents become such as containment and damage control. We have investigation and forensics. It actually helps in investigation. It helps in protecting others. Yeah. So if you do a report, for instance, the way KA were ideally hacked. Yeah. So if they did a report, they actually do what we call a threat intel report. They can actually help other people know that this is an attack. This is an attack that might. This is an attack that might affect us. Yeah. One. And we get to do a response, an incident response plan, which we talked about yesterday on how to maneuver it. Yeah, it helps strengthening cybersecurity defenses because it will enable people know what issues they might face. Yeah, as they relate to what you ideally faced, and it also marks as a compliance and legal obligation. So, like in Kenya, the Office of the Data Protection Rights or Office of the Data Protection dictates that in case you have been hacked and personal information has been shared online, it's good to ideally report the incident. Yeah, so that you can warn your stakeholders or your clients, and they might take prompt measures to either change their details or ensure they are aware of anything that might happen because of ideally what you did. Then from there, how and where can you report the incidents? You can do it by contacting IT support. You can preserve the evidence and show it to them when they come. If you have reporting procedures in your organization, you can ideally follow those reporting procedures. You can do external reporting if you actually have an external auditor or a penetration tester that is doing your security audit. And you can create more education awareness, like what we are doing today. Yeah. So I have shared knowledge with you. You can decide to share it with your colleagues that might have not been with us for this training, so that they also know that it is good for them, yeah, to actually be aware of the different aspects that might attack them. And with that, I think we can call it a day and a training. And I can take the next like 10 minutes, 7 or 10 minutes to answer the questions that you might have. Then we can close it. Yeah. So let's see. We can start from the top. Let's see if we have any questions. So Augustine, my expectation is that I will have an idea of how to develop a cybersecurity framework for my organization. So this we will actually do day 4, where we will be talking about a risk framework, or a risk matrix that you can use. I can help you elaborate what you need to look at and how do you develop that plan at the end of the day. Yeah. So I think we will get to that. No worries. Timothy says, expect to learn cost-effective tools and methods to enable me detect, prevent, and control, prevent and recover from cyber attacks. I think we have talked about that. On that one, let's see. Based on the antiviruses from Augustine in the market, and there is competition from different manufacturers, how will the user determine the best antivirus? From my experience, or at least my advice would be, do a lot of research on the different antiviruses or the antivirus protocols or companies that are there. Yeah, the best ones for you to do to check are the ones that have a community page where a lot of people actually put their sentiments, put their frustrations, put their joys whenever they are using these different antiviruses. Because from what different people are saying about it, it will give you a good perspective on whether it is a good antivirus or not, and whether these companies actually take keen notice of the sentiments of the people. Yeah, because a good manufacturer or a good vendor should be able to soothe the users in case there is an issue on something that is being raised. And if one has a community page where people actually share, that will be the best platform for you to know how these people.
When your kindergartners finally get to meet the baby that's been growing inside of your belly for the past 9 months. On October 10, 2022, I announced my pregnancy to them.
We can actually
then, on November 30th, 2022, we had a gender reveal in our classroom.
Simon, if you're with us, kindly help me mute her.
On January 17, 2023, they got creative and designed baby clothes for her. I'm thinking of turning them into a blanket once she grows out of them. On May 19, 2023, the day of their kindergarten graduation, I made a surprise visit and introduced my first ever group of students to baby Jade. All of their parents were there to share the special moment with us. When your kindergartners
unaniambia nini wewe? Waambie watoke hapa, sitaki kuona watu wasaidia kwa siku moja. Hii nadhani ni hasara inakaaje? Na kama sijaona,
are we together? Kindly help me mute, say. Thank you. So we can continue. So Henry Maina says, I expect to learn tools that can be used to mitigate threats in cybersecurity. I hope you have learned, Henry. Yes. Let's see, do we have any other questions? Based on the antiviruses, I think I've answered that. Anne Murungi is asking, how do you revert back to the original document after detecting alterations? I'm thinking this is in relation to hash my files. So the problem with hash my files is that it will not show you the specific points where the things have ideally been changed. It will only tell you that the file has been changed. So I think for this, you will need to go through it once again. And you will need to go through this once again and try and see if you can see where anything has been changed. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the best way to revert back to the original document. Yeah. From there, let's see if we have something else. Yep. Zamzam Yusuf actually says, or another trick is one can write a sentence and take the initials, adding those letters both in uppercase and lowercase with numerals. Yes, I think that is in relation to creating a strong password. So as long as it is at least 8 characters, a mixed match of uppercase and lowercase letters with numbers and characters, you can play with it in any way you want, and you will get a good way to actually do it. So Bono Tieno actually says, example on app permissions, it doesn't make sense why Truecaller asks for camera permissions. Ideally, yeah. So those are some of the things that needs to be looked at. You need to look at and see if it really needs permissions, ideally. So is it possible to hack your Facebook account if they don't have your mobile phone numbers? If they don't have, in what manner, that's maybe what I'd ask. Because ideally for someone to hack you, Nancy, they usually do what we call reconnaissance. And they can use different aspects of your details to gain access. So remember, when you're trying to log in Facebook, there are some points where maybe you're asked to either use your phone number or use your email. Yeah. So if they don't have your phone number, they can use your email or they can use your username. Yeah. As long as they can brute force your passwords, then yes, someone can hack your Facebook account if they don't have your phone numbers, because there are other aspects that are linked to your account that can be used to authenticate ideally who you are. Yeah, Jean, your Facebook account was hacked through Google account, Instagram and TikTok too. Sorry about that. I think now that you know it was through Google account, you can now go and ensure that you have better security policies such as passwords for the different social media accounts that you're also using. Yes, it is possible to hack both Facebook and Instagram accounts. Yeah. Thank you, George. Also, thank you, Josephat. So Wanjiru Mwangi, my computer recently made me download Windows 11 from Windows 10. since then it has been having constant updates. Was this probably a phishing technique? Not really. With Windows, they actually prompt people to use, it's like a marketing strategy for their Windows 11. Yeah. So most of the time you'll actually see they're actually telling you there is a Windows update. Then when you click on it, it updates it to a format that comes as a Windows 11. So that is not a phishing technique as per se, but that's just a way to foster most people to actually use Windows 11. Yeah. The constant updates is because I think I know Windows 11 is not that stable. So it ends up having issues that Microsoft is always patching, and that the updates are what we call vendor patches. So I don't think there is an issue as long as they haven't asked you for any personal information, then you should be safe. Yeah. Thank you, Faith, also. Is it safe to keep our documents in emails and Google Drives? Yes. Most emails actually use an encryption which we call PGP or POP3, which is ideally safe. The only difference will be how strong is your password. Because if your password is ideally weak, then that means your Google Drive can actually be hacked into and your documents can be retrieved. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Josephat, can computers connected to the same network in an organization be a source of virus and malwares? Yes. Yes, it can, George. Josephat, sorry. We have what we call a peer-to-peer network. Yeah. And a peer-to-peer network is basically an interconnection of machines in the same network, which can ideally share information from one machine to the other. So if one machine is basically attacked with a virus and it shares information from that machine to another machine, then the virus hops to that machine over the network. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you can find that the whole network of machines are under attack using a virus attack. Yeah. Is Windows Defender a sufficient antivirus? Yes, it is. I can say the only aspect to it is that it does not do the expulsion by itself. Yeah, it ideally gives you the option to either quarantine, to allow, or to remove in totality. But yes, Windows Defender is sufficient. However, you can always add another antivirus to your machine to enable it expunge any softwares or malicious activities that might have come without them prompting you. You know, once it gives you a prompt, you can decide to keep it. At the end of the day, you're hacked because of whatever you did and not whatever the antivirus actually did. So I hope, Oscar, that makes sense. What are some of the penetration testing tools? Depends with what you're doing a penetration test on. So there are different tools, Timothy, ranging from network tools to endpoint tools such as laptops and everything. But you can always Google online and find a tool that you might want depending on what you want to do. So there are different aspects, like for enumeration, you can use Nmap, you can use what we call dig, you can use tools such as OSINT, yeah. You can, for exploitation, maybe you can do tools like OffCrack that we talked yesterday. You can use tools such as Metasploit. There are also automated tools that you can check online and you use for penetration testing. I hope that makes sense. Or I think I have answered a lot for that. What's an ethical hacker? So basically, an ethical hacker is someone who hacks for ethical purposes. Yeah. So you're not hacking someone to exploit or steal from them. You're ideally hacking them and you're giving them a solution to what they're actually facing. Yeah. So ideally, like what I did with the example I showed you, that is what we call ethical hacking. Yeah. So I tried to hack their systems. Then with the information I got, I did not steal. Yeah. I did a report that will ideally help them to mitigate the issues that they are facing from what I ideally got. So Michael, I hope that makes sense. And you're asking the best antivirus tools for phones. I am not quite sure about it, but maybe I can just do a research on it tonight. Then tomorrow when we meet, you can ask the same question and I can give you a fully fledged answer on the same, but I can do a research on it. I cannot comment on it at the moment. And I hope that makes sense. Then Nyahure, you're asking, in instances where you are installing an antivirus to a computer, then it pops up that it has an inbuilt antivirus or Windows Defender. What should one do now that you have said Windows Defender is not enough? You can, ideally, Windows Defender can work, yeah. But if you want to do what we call a defense in depth, and you get that, then in this case, you can ideally turn off your Windows Defender. The goodness about Windows Defender, it's just a click on and off, Nyahure. So you just click it off and you don't have Windows Defender running. Then in this case, you now install your antivirus and it will pick and run well. Then maybe when your antivirus expires and you maybe don't have the funds to renew it at that point, so you can just switch on your antivirus and it ideally picks up. So Bernard is asking, who desires to be a member of Kenya Cybersecurity and Forensic Association, join the professional membership team. I think that's a conversation with you guys can have and see. But thank you for your questions. Thank you for your participation. That's it from me today. I'll hand it over to Simon so that he can finish it for us and we can meet tomorrow. Thank you so much and have a lovely afternoon. Simon?
Yes, so that was a good one, and I believe everyone is taking something home. For now, I would like to end the session unless there's someone has something else aside from whatever the trainer has talked about, has explained, all the questions answered. If you believe there is something left out in those explanations and coverages, you are all good to go. Otherwise, everyone is at liberty to leave. Now, I've left something out. The materials will be sent, and the link will be shared. That is the YouTube link, so that in case you missed, you can go and watch the training live from the YouTube.